if we are not fertile, then that is typically happening because our body doesn't feel safe enough for us to be fertile. So that can show up in different ways. It can show up as irregular periods. It can show up as having a period, but you're not ovulating. Sometimes you don't even realize that. It can be you're having periods, but you're having so many symptoms associated with it, maybe before it in terms of like PMS or PMDD. It may be heavy bleeding, passing lots of clots. Those are all things that are concerning that we definitely want to kind of get lined out and corrected and fixed before we get ready to conceive.
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, the podcast for conscious parents, caregivers, and educators who believe tantrums aren't terrible. They are powerful opportunities for connection, growth, and learning during the first 5 years. You'll explore how to use intentional language to raise calm, confident, and deeply connected kids, because the way we talk to kids becomes how they see themselves and engage with the world. Hi, I'm your host, Cara Tyrrell, classroom teacher turned parent educator and teacher trainer. Are you ready to nurture your children's mind, body, and spirit? Welcome, Toddler Tribe. Let's transform the toddler years together. My guest today is Vanda Aubrey, and I'm going to tell you all about her in just a moment. But the first thing you need to know is that she's a mom of 4. And if that's not enough to make you say, whoa, and want to know more about her, listen to how old they are. 8, 5, 3, and 1. Oh my gosh. So Vanda is also just an amazing human being who understands the body. She's a functional medicine nurse and board certified nurse coach specializing in hormone health for moms. Through her signature programs, she helps postpartum and toddler moms reclaim their energy, balance, and their hormones and feel like themselves again. And my favorite part of this interview was that she uses a root cause approach, which means we're getting to what really is causing the symptoms and the struggle instead of just band-aiding. So dive deep into your soul with this one. This is a soul episode because who you are is how you show up, and how you show up is how you connect with your kids, and that's how you parent. So you want to be healthy on every level, including a cellular one. Vanda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Cara. I'm so excited to dig in today.
Me too. Me too. Wellness and motherhood. They're things that we usually talk about from more a theory of mind, right? Maintaining a good mindset and a heart set. But you're here to talk to us about our bodies today, our physiological bodies. So let us know a little bit about you and what brought you to this work.
Yeah, of course. So I have been a nurse for a little over 11 years now. And about 5 years ago, I got very interested in functional medicine through my own journey with my hormones and decided that I needed and wanted to bring this information to more women. So I did, some furthering education, got certified, and now I do this, as my business. And I love it so much because my personal story with hormones really came from being on birth control for it was close to 10 years, deciding to go off of it. At the time, I quit taking it cold turkey, which I definitely recommend knowing what I know now. But I didn't know at the time. And when I did that, I lost my cycle for over 9 months. And I was so frustrated because that was terrifying, number one. But number two, I kept reaching out for help to the OBGYN that I saw at the time. And just kept expressing I just don't feel like this is normal. I went off the birth control, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, and I'm not having a period. And I just kept being met with, well, I don't know why you're so worried. You're not trying to get pregnant right now. So I don't know, what the concern is. If you want to have a regular period every month, you can go back on the birth control. And that just didn't sit well with me. I was like, no, I was having symptoms. I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling like myself on the birth control. There was a reason that I stopped it, and I don't want to go back on it. I'll just keep trying to figure it out on my own. And that's what I did. I had to do a lot of research. I listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, blogs, anything I could get my hands on that was female hormone cycle related. I read it, listened to it, and found functional medicine through that. It was several years later when I actually did like my certification, but even just applying what I had learned myself online, I was able to get my cycle back within like 2 months after that point. And it was just really impacted me and the women around me. So,
wow. Whew, there's a lot to dig into there. So explain to us just a really brief description for those people who are like, what does functional medicine mean?
So functional medicine really looks at what is the root cause of this problem? What is actually causing this thing or this symptom to happen? Because instead of just saying like, okay, we have this symptom and we're going to make it go away. We're going to fix it. We're going to make it go away with a medication. That is kind of what I would call like a Band-Aid solution, because we're not really getting to the issue itself. I don't want to just be prescribed, a new medicine, or told that I have to cut something out of my diet to make a symptom go away, when we could actually figure out, well, what's really causing it in the first place and fix that. And then we don't have the problem anymore.
Oh, yes. Wow. When you describe it like that, you know what? I think around here at Core 4 Parenting, we are all functional parenting.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. Yes, absolutely.
I love that. So you have 4 kids.
Yes.
How many of these kiddos did you have when this was your reality and you said, I want to take control of my hormonal stuff?
So my oldest son is actually adopted. So he is 8 years old and he was adopted. He came to live with us when he was about 2.5. And 6 weeks later, we had my first biological daughter. So we went from no kids to 2 kids, practically, overnight, first time parents. And that time was obviously overwhelming and stressful for many reasons. And it was while I was recovering postpartum from my daughter. I gave it a couple months. I'm like, I've never been through this before. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel like. But it got to be, 3, 4, 5 months down the road. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel terrible, but I just don't feel as good as I think that I should and that I would definitely like to. And it's affecting the way that I show up in everything. It was affecting how I performed at my job, how I parented, how I interacted with my spouse. And I'm just not the type of person to kind of just like accept that and be like, well, this is just how it is. I knew that there was probably things I could do better. Mm-hmm. And do differently to change that and help me to feel better. And so that was really when I was like, okay, I used this kind of functional medicine approach before, felt really great while I was doing it. How can I take what I learned then, apply it now, and even go deeper than that?
Wow. Oh my gosh. I did not know that part of your story. I think you get like more than superhero status at this point. That is extraordinary. And to have a level of self-awareness and be able to do that self-reflection, especially when there was such high levels of stress and commitment in your life, that just says a whole lot about who you are as a human. And I imagine that you use that to guide others. So, wow, incredibly well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I'm curious because when we talk about traditional medicine versus functional medicine, both need us to collect some data. And there's testing involved and there's numbers that pop up and comparisons that happen. Is it the same process of testing and data collection to get to a different action, a different result, depending on which lane people go?
I think there are similarities between the two, but there are some differences also. So, like you said, it's always important anytime we're working on our health, whether we are going to go a traditional medicine route or we're going to go a more holistic functional medicine route, we need to gather the data. We kind of need to know what it is we're most concerned about and how those symptoms are showing up in our day to day. Like, how often? Is it every day? Is it just a couple times a week? Is it only when you consume this type of food? I think it's really powerful for anybody, not just women, but women specifically, to tune into their bodies and listen to what the body's trying to tell us and take note of that and almost start tracking, what those messages are that the body is giving you, because even if you're going down a traditional medicine route, that information is very valuable to, the provider or practitioner that you're working with. And I think that I am blessed in the sense that I have seen both realms of health. Like, obviously, as a nurse, before I did this, I worked in the traditional model, and now I see kind of the flip side or the other option for that. And when we think about it in terms of a functional lens and what type of difference there would be there, I think that there is just even more of an emphasis on allowing the patient or the client to fully tell their story. I think in traditional medicine, unfortunately, things are so pushed to time constraints, and providers may only have 10 or 15 minutes, if that, to give you. You can't fully explain yourself and what's going on and what symptoms you're dealing with in that short of a time frame. So I think, number one, we get to really talk it out more in functional medicine. But then the other thing too is when we approach things from a functional lens, because we are trying to really get down to that root cause, we also spend the time to almost build out a timeline of events and symptoms. So significant events that have happened in your life, sometimes all the way back to your birth. And then all throughout life, trying to connect the dots between maybe stressful events or traumatic events, and then when symptoms started happening. And there's not always a correlation there, but you would be surprised. We are living our life day to day. We sometimes don't make those connections until we take the time to sit down and really, really look for them.
Oof. You're bringing me back. And I know it's not an exact parallel, but our first daughter, I was 40 weeks and one day she was born still with a traditional medicine approach and a doctor. And then when we were feeling ready to have another baby, I was like, I can't go that route. I need to feel heard and seen. I need someone to hear my story and to value it. And so we went the way of the midwifery. And it was such a different experience of exploring my body and how it changed, and successfully bringing a little one into this world. So, it is really important to have someone who's willing to have that level of connection with you. So in a sense, that's not a traditional lab. That's not going to get your blood drawn. But what you just described, taking people on this journey is kind of a psychological lab.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Toddler Tribe, I'm going to get you back to this episode in just a minute, but I wanted to tell you something that I don't think people tell you enough. Toddlerhood is not terrible. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be a terrific time of exploration and learning and deep connection between parent, caregiver, and child. And so I invite you to go have a look at my Transforming the Toddler Years course, because it doesn't have to be as hard as it feels every single day. We'll look through the 6 soul and science-based modules together. The magic of your mindset. I'll talk you through the power of your perspective and how you can truly shift everyday moments. I crack the hood on what's going on in your baby's brain, break down the linguistics of the language we use, how we talk to kids, and how they hear us. And then we go all in on the science of strategies and build you a personalized parenting toolkit that allows you to tackle every day and feel a real sense of accomplishment that you are raising your unique, authentic child to be the very best version of themselves, and you're growing every day too. I'm 100% in your corner. These are all self-paced modules, but every course purchase comes with free access to our bi-monthly group coaching program for 3 whole months. So hop on in and let's get started transforming your toddler years today. Use the link in the show notes, and I cannot wait to see you there. So what if they do? So what if people go and they get their labs done, right? And they have all this other data to look at and think about. What if it, a traditional doctor says it's fine. It all looks good. What would you say to that?
Immediate response would be, well, we need to really take a look at that a little bit deeper, because there is so much that we can learn from pretty standard lab panels, but you have to stop just accepting the normal range, and you want someone that can work with you to look at it through an optimal lens. Those ranges are going to be a lot tighter, meaning that the high end and low end are going to be much shorter, if that makes sense. Your standard lab, the way that they determine those normal ranges comes from historical data from the average population. Mm-hmm. Well, we know that the average population is not that healthy. And I don't want to compare myself to just average. I want to really be focused on how can I live longer and be my healthiest while I do that. I want to have optimal health when that's possible. And so you can have a practitioner that will compare your standard labs to optimal ranges. And then the biggest piece that I think is most important, it's helpful, for someone to say well, this lab and that lab are not within optimal range. You need to work on that. Well, but what does that really mean? Mm-hmm. So for someone to actually take that then a step further and say, this is what this lab actually means, or the fact that it's out of range either can cause these symptoms, could lead to this type of disease down the road, or be linked to this, that or the other. I mean, depending on, which lab it is you're looking at. But one that comes to mind immediately is a fasting glucose and a hemoglobin A1C. Those are pretty standard things that get checked. But oftentimes we're oh, it's normal, no worries there. But type 2 diabetes and people that are in a pre-diabetic state, that is a very large problem in today's society. And it's something that if we know about it, we can really take steps to fix and correct that. But we have to have someone that's willing to have that deeper conversation with us. If it's well, this is in an okay range right now, but you need to be paying attention to it. You need to be more intentional with it.
Yeah, I love this, that proactive approach of where am I, where do I want to be, and how do I get there? This is really resonating with me. I am on a journey right now. I'm calling it my Fit by 50 journey. And I just turned 49. So I'm well on my way. I'm about a year in and I have a year to go. And I had my practitioner, who I adore, actually print out my 1 year on my levels in comparison to the year before. And she put a gold star on it. It was so cute. This is the journey that I'm on, and I want to see that progress. Now, I'm tackling this post kids as somebody who is wanting to be in control of my physical health for the second half of my life, when the body starts to take control if we don't take control of it.
Yeah.
What about women who know they want to be a mom, but not yet? Do you work with women to help kind of optimize their body for when they decide to take that huge step?
Yeah, absolutely. Because our fertility is important regardless of whether we are trying to conceive or not. Fertility and a woman's menstrual cycle, it can really be considered their fifth vital sign. You'll see that in a lot of literature and research and talk in the functional medicine world once you dig into it. Because if we are not fertile, then that is typically happening because our body doesn't feel safe enough for us to be fertile. So that can show up in different ways. It can show up as irregular periods. It can show up as having a period, but you're not ovulating. Sometimes you don't even realize that. It can be you're having periods, but you're having so many symptoms associated with it, maybe before it in terms of like PMS or PMDD. It may be heavy bleeding, passing lots of clots. Those are all things that are concerning that we definitely want to kind of get lined out and corrected and fixed before we get ready to conceive. And, one thing that's especially important for women to remember, and that most women don't even know or realize because nobody's teaching it to us, what we're doing today affects the health of the egg that we're going to produce 90 to 100 days from now. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely worth it to kind of invest and be intentional in your fertility way before you're actually ready to get pregnant.
What I love about the time we live in is that these type of conversations are normalized and can happen. I mean, I wish I had known you a decade ago when I was having a lot of the symptoms that you just described and believed and took action on what I thought was the only decision, which was to have a hysterectomy.
There's a lot of women that are put in that position. And there's a lot of women that even that's the only advice they're being given. I see that every day, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, let's change that. Let's change that. And, there's so much of this work that comes from a deep place internally, and that has to be there if someone is asking for support. But tell us how you work with women. How do you bring them to the place of, okay, we have the information we need. Let's take some inspired action?
Yeah. So of course, the first step that I take with my clients is a very detailed intake form. I want to hear the back history. I want to hear the story. I want to know like when you very first started your period, how were they back then? Have you been on birth control? Are you still on birth control? There's a lot of information that we can learn from just talking. But then I have 2 functional tests that I like to run on all of my clients. So we'll talk about the hair one first. This is a hair tissue mineral analysis. Super simple to do on yourself at home. And then you just mail it in the mailbox to the lab. You cut a very small sample of your hair. And what we're testing here is for your mineral levels. And it also gives us a reading on heavy metals. This is important because we can't make minerals in our body. We have to consume them through our diet or supplements as needed. And we live in a time where, number one, our diets are not as healthy as they probably once were for our ancestors. But then also, even for someone that does eat healthy and maybe buys all organic things or eats that at least 50, 75% of the time, our lands have been farmed for so many years now that the potassium content of a banana today is not the same as it was 50, 100 years ago. It's just kind of how over time. And so we're left with these larger nutritional and mineral gaps than we've ever kind of been up against before. And it's not something that is typically going to show up on your blood work, because with blood work, we are looking at what is outside of the cells. With this hair tissue mineral analysis test, we are actually getting a look inside the cell, which is, for the majority of minerals, where they are supposed to be in the most abundance in the body. And the reason that this is important is because we have to have these minerals in order for certain processes in our body to occur. So like making energy, creating a hormone, producing a hormone. Once the thyroid gland makes a thyroid hormone, we've got to have enough potassium to get it inside the cell where it needs to be to do its job. So that gives us a lot of information as to why someone might be having X, Y, and Z symptom. The other test that I like to run on all of my clients is called a Dutch test. It's a dried urine hormone panel. And this gives us the kind of levels. Where are your estrogen levels, your progesterone, your testosterone, also your cortisol, which is your stress hormone if someone's not familiar. And then with Dutch testing, we get to take it a step further because it also shows us how the body is metabolizing and kind of using up and processing these different hormones. Specifically, we pay a lot of attention to estrogen because I won't get into too much of the weeds because it's a very like sciencey, nerdy thing. But, depending on the way that your body is metabolizing your estrogen can really drive the type of symptoms that you're having. And it can even set you up to be more at risk for certain types of cancers down the road. So like that's information that we want to have. So we get to combine these two tests in my practice to first with Dutch testing, it tells us what the hormone levels are. Then with HTMA testing, it tells us kind of why they might be out of balance with one another, or high or low. And so that helps me make a really actionable plan for my clients that's customized to exactly what their body needs. It's not, it's not cookie cutter advice that you could get from anybody. Not that those things aren't helpful as a starting point at times, but when you're really ready to dig in, or you're already trying things on your own, you're eating healthy, you're working out, and you're like, I still feel like crap every month when my cycle comes around. Like, what is the deal? That's when it's so important to pull in this customized piece and figure out exactly what your body needs.
Wow. Well, I'm a fan of all the nerdy stuff, but you're right. We don't have time to dive in, but it has me thinking about doing some reading. All right. So I'm going to ask you this kind of oddball question. What about all of us who are listening right now and thinking, my husband could really use a little bit of help too?
Yep.
Mine particularly is going through a space where family blood pressure is a problem. His blood pressure is a problem. Tried with diet and exercise, didn't bring it down enough. Feels like the only choice is medication. Like, what about the guys? Can you help them too?
Yeah. So I don't work with a lot of men in my practice. I have worked with a few in the past, but HTMA testing can be done on anyone. It can be done on kids, women, men. It can be done on anybody. And it's one of the it's like my favorite functional test because you get so much data from it. So like I have ran one on my 8-year-old son that really struggles with ADHD to kind of help us figure some things out. I've ran it on my husband because he also struggles with blood pressure. And you can absolutely learn a lot regardless of who you are, how old you are, what your situation is from HTMA testing for sure.
And can you just request that test?
No, unfortunately, you have to find a provider that is a functional provider that's been trained in HTMA testing. It's not something that your doctor is honestly probably even going to know about. If you told them you're going to go get this hair test from this girl you've seen on Instagram, like they would think you're crazy. But I promise there's research to back up its validity. It's been studied for like hundreds and hundreds of years now. I wish and I hope at some point that we see it more widely used in like regular traditional medicine, but it's just not right now, unfortunately.
Well, that doesn't surprise me a whole lot. But the fact that there are people like you out there saying, if you want to know more, if you want to do better, there is a way. That's incredibly hopeful. So listen up, everybody. I mean, nothing messes with your hormones. Nothing messes with your cortisol levels. Quite like parenthood, right? Motherhood really taxes you from the moment that you start. You're in it. So if you want to know more about how to work with Vanda, I would love you to use the link in the show notes. And Vanda, is there anything like first step that they should do on your website?
Yeah. So anybody that is coming to hang out with me to learn more, I have a free resource. It is called the Hormones 101 podcast. It's a secret podcast. There's, I think, 8 episodes. You can listen to the whole thing in under 30 minutes, but it's a great place to get started, to just dig a little deeper into the topics that we've talked about today, to really give you some actionable steps to get started on your own to kind of build the foundation. And then you can dig in with those testing pieces when you're ready and when it feels right.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I mean, being a mom of 4, someone who takes the time to create resources like this, that's a lot. So I guess what we have to take away from this is that you likely have yours dialed in if you have the energy, the attention, and the resources to do everything you do.
Yeah, thankfully.
All right. Well, thanks again, Vanda. We really, really appreciate you. And for all of you out there, you know what to do. Stay mindful and proactive as we transform the toddler years.